Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own home? Because that's exactly what I became. I'm a 72-year-old widower. My wife, Margaret, passed away 3 years ago after a long battle with cancer. For 50 years, we built a life together, raised our son David in the very house I'm about to tell you about. That house wasn't just wood and bricks. It was memories. The creak in the hallway was from the nights David used to sneak cookies after bedtime. The garden roses, Margaret's pride and joy. After she died, the silence of that house was unbearable. Every chair, every room, every little thing reminded me of her absence. And so, when David and his wife Jessica suggested I move in with them so I wouldn't feel alone, I thought it was a blessing. Little did I know, it was a trap. At first, I convinced myself things were fine. I helped around the house, paid part of the bills, cooked sometimes, and never asked for much. But Jessica, she had a way of making me feel unwanted. Her smile was polite when guests were around, but behind closed doors, her words cut deep. You should be in a retirement home, not living with newlyweds. She'd whispered to David when she thought I wasn't listening. And the worst part? My son never defended me. Last week, Jessica finally said the words out loud. Why don't you just leave? We need the space. David sat beside her at the kitchen table. He lowered his eyes, fiddled with his phone, and stayed silent. That silence hurt more than any insult Jessica had ever thrown at me, and so I left. But that's not the end of the story. Because the very next day, Jessica moved her parents into my room. And the night after that, they threw a party in the house that used to be mine. But here's where it gets interesting. I showed up. Not alone. I brought someone with me. Someone they never expected. And when that person walked through the door, their faces turned pale. Now I have to ask you, before I reveal the whole story, what would you do if your child's spouse threw you out of your own home? Would you walk away quietly? Or would you remind them exactly who they're dealing with? Stick with me. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about revenge, dignity, and justice. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. Life with David and Jessica wasn't always bad. When I first moved in, I thought maybe it would heal the loneliness. I kept telling myself, they're young. They're busy. They don't mean it. I'd cook breakfast. Bacon, eggs, pancakes like I used to make for David as a boy. He'd smile faintly, thank me, and then rush off to work. Jessica, though, she would roll her eyes. Don't you think you should be watching your cholesterol instead of cooking greasy food? She'd mutter. I bit my tongue, always. When Margaret was alive, we both believed family was everything, so I reminded myself of that promise. Love them, even if they don't love you back. But slowly, Jessica's comments became sharper. One day, she walked into the living room while I was watching Jeopardy reruns. She stopped, crossed her arms, and said, Jessica, you've been sitting there for hours. Don't you have somewhere else to be? Me. This is my home, too. Jessica, scoffing. No, this is our home. You're just visiting. That word stung. I turned to David, who was fixing himself a sandwich in the kitchen. He heard it. He knew it was wrong. But instead of speaking up, he said quietly, Jess, come on. Don't start. Don't start. Not, that's my father. Show him respect. Just, don't start. That was the beginning of the end. Over the months, she complained about everything I did. If I left a coffee cup in the sink, she'd mutter about how old people are messy. If I forgot to switch the laundry, she'd sigh loudly about how some people just can't keep up. And David? He chose silence every single time. But the final straw came one Sunday evening. We were all sitting at the dinner table. Me, David, Jessica. I'd made roast chicken the way Margaret used to. Jessica barely touched hers. She set her fork down, folded her napkin, and looked me dead in the eye. Jessica, you know, my parents have been talking about moving closer to us. They need the space, and honestly, we could use the help. It'd be nice if we had the guest room available. Me, frowning. The guest room? That's my room. Jessica, smiling coldly. Exactly. I looked at David. His fork was halfway to his mouth. He froze, glanced between us, and then lowered his eyes back to his plate. Not a word. That silence cut deeper than any insult. The very next day, Jessica confronted me in the kitchen. Jessica, listen, I'm not trying to be mean, but you should start packing. My parents are coming this weekend. They need the room. Me. And where exactly do you expect me to go? Jessica, shrugging. A retirement home? A small apartment? I don't know. It's not my problem. Not my problem. David walked in right then, coffee in hand. I looked at him, hoping, praying that he would finally speak up. Me. David, are you okay with this? David, quietly. Dad, maybe it's for the best. Jess's parents could really use the help. You'll figure something out. I stood there in silence. My own son. The boy I raised. The boy I worked 3 jobs for just to send him to college, telling me I'd figure something out. So I did. I packed my suitcase, folded my shirts neatly, tucked Margaret's photograph safely inside. As I zipped the bag shut, I heard laughter downstairs. Jessica on the phone, telling her mother, it's all set. You can move in as soon as he's gone. When I carried my suitcase out to the car, Jessica didn't even look up from her phone. She just smirked. And David, he followed me outside. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd change his mind. But all he said was, call me if you need anything, Dad. Then he went back inside. The next day, I drove past the house, just once. Their cars were in the driveway, and there, through the living room window, I saw Jessica's parents, sitting on my couch drinking wine. My room's curtains were open, and I could see boxes already stacked inside. And then, 2 nights later, I heard from a neighbor. Jessica and her parents were throwing a party. A big one. Music, food, alcohol, guests. In the house I bought. The house I built, that was when something inside me changed. I wasn't going to let them get away with it. And that, my friends, was the beginning of my plan. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in a small motel room staring at the ceiling fan creaking above me, and for the first time in years, I felt the same fire I'd had when I was a young man trying to build a life for my family. See, what Jessica didn't know, what David had long forgotten, was that the house wasn't theirs. Yes, I had let David and Jessica live there for years, but legally, the deed was still under my name. I had bought that house when Margaret was pregnant with David. We made the down payments together, painted the nursery, even built the deck out back with our own hands. When Margaret passed, I never transferred ownership, not out of spite, but out of laziness, really. Paperwork felt exhausting after losing her. But now, that laziness had become my secret weapon. The next morning, I called up Margaret's old lawyer, Mr. Feldman. He was an older man himself, sharp as ever, with a voice that carried the weight of authority. Me. Feldman, it's Harold. I need your help. Feldman. Ah, Harold. It's been a long time. What's going on? Me, gritting my teeth. My son's wife threw me out of my own house. She moved her parents in, and they're throwing a party tomorrow night. Feldman, pausing. Your house? Me. Yes, mine. The deed's still in my name, isn't it? Feldman, smiling through the phone. It sure is, and if they think otherwise, well, they're in for a surprise. We met that afternoon at his office. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside was the original deed, notarized, signed, sealed. Proof that the house was mine, beyond any doubt. Feldman, all you have to do, Harold, is show up. I'll handle the rest. Me. Show up? To the party? Feldman, grinning. Exactly. Nothing makes a better statement than revealing the truth in front of an audience. And oh, how perfect that was. Jessica wanted an audience? She was about to get one. That night, I polished my old shoes, pressed a clean shirt, and even spritzed a bit of aftershave. The same kind Margaret used to say made me smell like James Bond. I wanted to walk into that house not as a broken old man with a suitcase, but as the rightful owner reclaiming his dignity. And so, the plan was simple. I'd arrive at the party with Feldman, let Jessica dig her own grave with her smug little comments. And then we dropped the truth like a bombshell. All I had to do was wait. The night of the party, the house was glowing with string lights, music thumping from inside, cars lined up along the curb. I parked a few houses down with Feldman in the passenger seat. He carried a leather briefcase, the kind that just looked dangerous. We walked up the driveway slowly. I could hear laughter spilling out the windows, glasses clinking, the faint smell of barbecue in the air. When I reached the door, I paused. My heart hammered in my chest. For a second, I almost turned around. But then I pictured Margaret, her gentle voice always reminding me, "Harold, don't let anyone push you around. You're stronger than you think." I rang the doorbell. The music dipped as someone opened the door. Jessica stood there in a glittery dress, holding a wine glass. When she saw me, her smile froze. Jessica, mocking, well, look who couldn't stay away. What happened? Dad, motel TV too boring for you? Me, calmly. Evening, Jessica. I came with someone special. I stepped aside. Feldman entered, adjusting his glasses. Feldman. Good evening. My name is Samuel Feldman. I'm Mr. Thompson's attorney. Chatter inside quieted. Guests began turning curious. Jessica's parents, seated comfortably on the couch, looked up in confusion. Jessica, frowning. Attorney? What's this about? Me, steady voice. This is about my house. The room went still. Feldman opened his briefcase, pulled out the deed, and held it up for all to see. Feldman, clear, authoritative tone. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to clarify something. This property, every wall, every window, every inch of it, belongs to Mr. Harold Thompson. Legally. The deed is still in his name, which means every single one of you currently residing here without his permission is trespassing. Gasps rippled through the room. Jessica's face went pale. Her wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. Jessica, stammering. What are you talking about? This is our house. Feldman, smirking. Afraid not. Perhaps your husband assumed ownership passed. To him, it did not. And unless Mr. Thompson explicitly grants permission, you and your parents have no legal right to be here. Her parents shifted uncomfortably, setting their drinks down. Guests whispered. One man muttered, "Wait, this isn't even their house." Jessica turned to David, who had just come out from the kitchen, face pale as milk. Jessica, hissing. David, tell everyone this is your house. David, weakly. I didn't know. The silence that followed was deafening. I stepped forward, my voice firm but calm. You threw me out of my own home, Jessica. You humiliated me. You told me I was a burden, a freeloader. And all this time, you were the ones freeloading. Living under my roof, on my dime, with my son too spineless to admit it. Gasps, murmurs. Someone actually clapped once, quickly silenced by the tension. Jessica's parents stood up, red-faced. Her father, "You didn't tell us this wasn't your house." Jessica, screaming, I thought it was. He was supposed to give it to David. I didn't know. Feldman, cutting in. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. As of now, you have 48 hours to vacate this property, or will be filing for immediate removal with the sheriff's department. The guests began awkwardly gathering their coats, whispering as they left. The once lively party dissolved into chaos. Jessica's mother stormed out the door first, muttering, "This is humiliating." Her father followed, glaring at Jessica, like she'd committed a crime. Jessica turned back to me, her face twisted with rage. Jessica, shaking. You set me up. You wanted to embarrass me in front of everyone." Me, quietly. "No, Jessica. You embarrassed yourself. All I did was show the truth." David stood frozen, staring at the floor. Me, to him. "Son, I would have given you this house one day, gladly. But respect goes both ways. And tonight, you showed me where your loyalties lie." He didn't answer. He couldn't. I turned to Feldman, nodded, and walked past Jessica out the door. My shoes clicked on the porch, the night air cool against my face. Behind me, the house was silent, except for the faint sound of Jessica sobbing. But for the first time in months, I felt peace. I didn't go back to the motel that night. Instead, I sat on the porch swing, my porch swing, listening to the crickets and the faint hum of the streetlights. It felt strange. Being back, but not really back. The house still smelled of Jessica's perfume and her mother's cheap candles. Inside, the silence was thick. Feldman had left after making the 48-hour announcement. The guests had scattered, like startled birds. All that remained was me, David, and Jessica, though she refused to come out of the bedroom. David finally stepped outside onto the porch. He didn't sit. He just stood there, staring out into the yard like a guilty child. David, quietly. "Dad, I didn't know. I really thought the house was mine." Me, without looking at him. "And if it had been? Would you have stopped her from throwing me out?" David, hesitant. "I don't know." That answer hurt more than if he'd just said no. I turned to face him. Me. "Son, I worked my whole life so you wouldn't have to struggle. I gave you this roof, this safety. And when your wife treated me like trash, you stayed silent. That silence was louder than her insults." David's jaw tightened. His eyes glistened, but he didn't cry. David, hoarse. "I didn't want to lose her." Me, shaking my head. "And in keeping her, you lost me." For the first time in my life, I saw my son with new eyes, not as the boy I raised, but as a man who had failed me when I needed him most. Jessica eventually emerged, her face red, her voice sharp. "Jessica," snapping, "this isn't over. You can't just humiliate me in front of all my friends and expect me to sit quietly. My parents are furious. Everyone thinks we're liars now." Me, calmly, "You did that yourself." Jessica, shrill, "You're a bitter old man, Harold. No wonder your wife's gone. You probably drove her crazy too." That was the first and only time I nearly lost my temper. My hands clenched the armrest of the porch swing until my knuckles turned white. But before I could speak, David raised his voice for the first time all evening. David, angrily, "Jess!" Enough. She froze. He had never raised his voice to her before, and we all knew it. David, to her, quieter, "You crossed a line." She glared at both of us, then stormed back inside, slamming the door so hard the glass rattled. David sat down finally, his shoulders slumped. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered, "David, what happens now?" Me, sighing. "Now? You pack her things. You've got 2 days." He nodded slowly, like a man finally realizing the weight of his choices. Those 48 hours were tense. Jessica screamed, pleaded, and threatened in equal measure. Her parents never returned, not after the humiliation they'd suffered at that party. David tried to mediate, but the damage was already done. And when the time came, Jessica left, bags packed, eyes burning with hatred. She didn't even look at David as she walked out. The day she drove away, David sat on the porch steps, his head in his hands. "David, Dad, I don't know if she'll ever forgive me." Me, "Son, the real question is, do you forgive yourself?" He didn't answer, and I didn't press him. It's been weeks since that night. The house is quiet again, different from the lonely quiet after Margaret passed, but peaceful. The roses in the garden have started to bloom again. I sit out on the porch most evenings, sipping tea, watching the sunset, and listening to the world go by. David still lives here for now. He helps with the yard, cooks dinner sometimes, tries in small ways to make up for what happened. But between us, there's a distance. Not anger, not hatred, just a quiet acknowledgement that something broke the night he chose silence over me. Maybe it will heal. Maybe it won't, but that's life, isn't it? As for Jessica, she hasn't returned. She calls David now and then, from what I overhear, but the bitterness in her voice hasn't faded. I don't know if their marriage will survive, and honestly, I don't know if I care. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes the cruelest betrayal isn't an insult shouted at your face. It's the silence of the ones you love when they should have defended you. Silence is louder than words, heavier than fists. And that silence from my son, it cut deeper than Jessica's cruelty ever could. But I also learned something else. You don't have to scream to get revenge. You don't have to stoop to their level. Sometimes, all you need is the truth. And the truth is a weapon more powerful than any insult. I'll tell you this, dear listener, don't let anyone make you feel like a burden. If you've worked hard, raised your family, sacrificed for others, you have earned your dignity. No one can take that from you. Jessica thought she could strip me of my pride, cast me out like an old coat no one wants to wear, but she forgot. One thing, I built this home. I built this life. And I'll be damned if I let anyone take that from me. So, am I the a-hole for showing up at that party and reminding them all who I really am? Or was I right to teach them a lesson they'll never forget? I'll let you decide. But as you think about it, remember this. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't anger or shouting. It's standing tall, calm, and unshaken, while the truth does all the talking for you. And that's my story. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you for listening. Because stories like mine aren't easy to tell. They're messy, painful, and a little too close to home for some of you. But I also know I'm not alone. Many of you out there have felt like a burden in your own family. Many of you have been disrespected, silenced, or pushed aside. And maybe, just maybe, hearing my story gives you a little courage to stand up for yourself. Now I'll ask you the same question again. AITA, was I wrong to expose Jessica at her own party? Or was it justice? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading them. And if you enjoyed this story, this tale of betrayal, dignity, and revenge, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel. Because family drama may be messy, but the lessons we learn from it, they last a lifetime. And one last thing. If you're listening to this, and you've got parents or grandparents still around, call them, visit them, remind them they're loved. Because once they're gone, silence is all you'll have left.